Only now, standing in front of my ring light, have I realised how much I've sunburnt. There are lots of many different movements and charities that fight for causes that best suit your beliefs, and one of these causes that many people feel passionate about, and rightfully so, is the welfare of animals. Now, before I get into this video, I feel like it's probably important for me to state that I am not vegan or vegetarian. I do consume meat products. Kill me, I don't know what you want me to say. I'm a picky eater. You know, I'm not here to fight my corner. Say what you want about me, but, you know, before I get into this video, I don't want people to, you know, me for being non-vegan or vegetarian. Sorry, I guess. But I completely understand why people choose to be vegan, whether it's for the planet or for their own health or, you know, because they love animals. And whatever the reason is, that is totally fine, you know, good for you, that's great. And animals are treated horribly in the, you know, farming industry. That is a true fact. It's disgusting and that does need to change. One of the most well-known charities or non-profit organisations that fights for the welfare of animals is PETA. PETA, the horse is here. PETA fights for the rights of animals. It's against factory farming, the fur industry and animal testing, which again is great, as well as other activities that it considers to, you know, exploit animals, which sounds great. Like, why am I making this video? What is possibly wrong with that? Am I just a horrible person, you know, that I'm against this? I'm against an animal rights group? No. PETA has a very interesting way of spreading their message. They're assholes. I don't know what else you want me to say. They're horrible people. So today I thought we could have a look into the horrors of PETA, the controversies and the weird games that they have created to spread their message in the name of animal rights. So without further ado, sit back, relax, and I'll just get straight into today's video topic. So first, it's time for a history lesson. We need to, you know, understand where PETA has come from. So PETA was founded in 1980 by two people, one of them named Ingrid Newkirk and Alex Pacheco. I'm sorry if I've mispronounced that surname. These two later became a couple as well, and the two of them loved animals so much that they basically bound together to found their non-profit organisation known as PETA, which stands for like the People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals or something. I don't know why I didn't include that in my notes. But PETA originally first gained attention in 1981 during the Silver Spring monkeys case. Now, if you don't know what that is, basically monkeys were and treated horrendously in the name of science. Experiments were conducted on, I think, 17 monkeys inside an Institute of Behavioural Research in Silver Spring in Maryland. And these were carried out by a researcher named Edward Taub. Alex Pacheco, who, you know, had founded PETA, had actually taken on a job in May of 1981 inside this research facility to sort of, you know, uncover what was going on, to sort of be an inside man. And it was revealed that Edward Taub had actually been cutting the sensory ganglia of the monkeys that supplied nerves, that was like the supplier of nerves in the monkeys' fingers, hands, arms and legs. Yeah, pretty horrific stuff, I'm not gonna lie. This researcher then went on to use restraints, electric shock therapy, withholding food and water to force the monkeys to, you know, use the different parts of their bodies. I don't know, it's gross, nasty. But what I can say is this research and this horrific abuse of the monkeys did actually lead to the discovery of neuroplasticity and a new therapy for stroke victims. But Alex then went into the laboratory at night and started, you know, taking photos of what the monkeys were living in, what they were having to go through, and he kind of, you know, exposed them. He took this to a journal and was like, look at this. This is disgusting. Rightfully so. And these photographs were actually then passed on to the police as well, who ended up raiding the monkey lab and arresting Edward Taub. And he was then convicted of 6 counts of animal cruelty, which was the first conviction of an animal researcher in the US. However, this conviction was actually overturned on appeal. Not only did this case lead to the first raid in the United States on an animal lab, it also triggered the amendment in 1985 of the United States Animal Welfare Act. Yeah, so they've been out here, they've been doing it, But in 2020, PETA's website claimed that they had 6.5 million supporters and received around 50 million in donations in 2019 alone. Nowadays, PETA is known for rage bait. To put it bluntly, instead of breaking into labs and freeing monkeys, they just rage bait people online. They're pretty aggressive with their media stunts and it's pretty cringe. Many of PETA's campaigns focus on fast food restaurants such as Mackey's, KFC, Wendy's, Burger King, and as well as the animal testing industry. They've boycotted lots of companies that test on animals, which again, rightfully so. In this day and age, we shouldn't need to test on animals. It just sounds so outdated. And funnily enough, after PETA launched their attacks on Mackey's and Wendy's, they actually did introduce vegetarian options on their menu, which, I mean, it worked. As well as Polo Ralph Lauren actually no longer uses fur in their products. Avon and Estee Lauder and other companies stopped testing on animals because of PETA, and the Pentagon stopped shooting pigs and goats in wound tests, and a slaughterhouse in Texas was actually closed down because of PETA. So what I'm trying to say is, they have actually done some pretty positive and good things, which is great. That's what we like to hear. But what we don't like to hear is the amount of controversies that this charity has gone through, because let me tell you, it's a lot, okay? Don't let all the positiveness fool you, because this charity, or whatever you want to call it, sucks balls. PETA has come under fire in more recent years. Their most well-known controversy is probably their criticism of Steve Irwin. You know, the late Steve Irwin, who is an absolute animal legend, who loved animals and conservation and wanted to, bring back extinct animals. He wanted the planet, to succeed and do really well. That's Steve Irwin. But if you're unfamiliar with who Steve Irwin is, he actually passed away in 2006 when he was attacked by a stingray and the barb went straight through his heart. But Steve Irwin was a huge animal lover and he was known as the crocodile hunter. He was a passionate conservationist and believed in promoting environmentalism by sharing his excitement about the natural world rather than preaching it to people. PETA, take notes. He is an absolute legend. He genuinely is an absolute legend. His son and daughter carry on his legacy today. The family is just too pure for this earth. He himself said that his mission, the reason he was put on this earth, was to save the world's endangered species. He bought massive plots of land in Australia to house animals and create sanctuaries for animals. And you know what? Everyone loved Steve Irwin. I don't think Steve Irwin has any haters besides PETA, because, right, if you have no idea what I'm talking about, you're probably thinking, how on earth can PETA, an animal rights group, hate someone that was an absolute legend and a god amongst animals? Do you know what I mean? He was so amazing. But anyway, PETA being PETA, because they were I honestly think this just boils down to jealousy. I think they were jealous that they were not Steve Irwin and they can't do the things that Steve Irwin was doing. So they decided on what would have been Steve Irwin's 57th birthday in 2019 to start a Twitter campaign against him. They strung out several tweets criticising Google, because Google were using their little, Google Daily thing. It was a photo of Steve Irwin to celebrate his 57th birthday, and they were actually, Steve Irwin was, not an animal rights activist. And they wrote that Steve Irwin was actually killed because he was harassing a stingray and forced animals to perform, which isn't true. Steve Irwin himself would probably admit that the stingray that killed him, was only defending itself. He would agree with that statement. I feel like that's fair for me to say. And he wasn't actually too close to the stingray. The theory is that the stingray saw a shadow above it and panicked and, threw out its barb and accidentally hit Steve. A Washington Post editor wrote, quote, "PETA can add insulting to a deceased cultural icon to its infamous repertoire." And yeah, it can, because how low can you get? And this wasn't the first time that they'd come under fire for talking about the Steve Irwin either, because literally in 2006 when Steve Irwin died, the vice president of PETA said that Irwin had made a career out of antagonising and frightening wild animals, which again is just not true. That's not what he was doing. But because Steve Irwin was Australian, an Australian member of parliament was absolutely disgusted by the comments that PETA had made. I think the whole entire world was, to be honest. But they said, and I quote, "It's interesting how PETA want to treat animals ethically but cannot even think for a minute whether or not their outlandish comments are ethical towards their fellow human beings." And I also just want to say that Steve Irwin isn't responsible for euthanizing any healthy animals, unlike PETA, so... That leads us nicely into the next controversy. PETA have ridiculously high euthanasia rates. And I mean ridiculously high. The percentage of animals that are euthanized at PETA's shelters is insane. So basically, in 2008, the meat industry lobby group, the Centre for Consumer Freedom, said in a news release that, quote, "Official report filed by PETA itself shows that animal rights groups put to death nearly every single dog, cat and other pet that they took in for adoption in 2006, with a kill rate of, are you ready for this? 97.4%. In 2012, the Virginia Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services said that it had in the past considered changing PETA's status from a shelter to a euthanasia clinic, because that's far more fitting. PETA's willingness to, take in anything that comes through the door, which, lots of shelters won't take, like really sick animals, aggressive animals, lost animals that have just come in from the street that are perfectly healthy but just haven't been adopted. It doesn't matter, because they just euthanize them anyway. PETA themselves have also acknowledged that they euthanized 95% of the animals in its shelter in 2011. And again in 2014, PETA euthanized over 80% of the shelter's animals, with the justification being mercy killings. And then in 2014, where it gets even worse, in 2014, PETA took a chihuahua from an owner's porch and euthanized it before the owners even knew it had gone missing. They must have thought the animal was missing or what. They picked it up, euthanized it without alerting the owner. That's how the owner found out, because it had already been killed. Bruh. Now, to me, that's not a mercy killing. That's just a haha. Why would you do that? What? I don't even know what that is. That's just crazy. But despite this, it doesn't matter, as they carry on. They still have pretty high euthanasia rates, and they haven't stopped. Which, you know what? Maybe they have their own reasons. Maybe they have their reasons for doing it. I don't work with animals. I don't know how animals work, but it's kind of an insane thing to practice what you preach. Now this next controversy, trigger warning, is probably the most insane one, and I'm going to be completely honest. If you still support PETA after this, give your head a bit of a wobble, because this is insane. So PETA launched a campaign called It's Still Going On, and this campaign features newspaper ads comparing widely publicised murder/cannibalisation cases to the deaths of animals in slaughterhouses. This campaign, as you can imagine, has attracted quite the social media attention, because that's insane. Not only because it's crazy, but also because of the victims' families. So they released an ad in 1991 describing the deaths of the victims of Jeffrey Dahmer as being the same thing as animals in slaughterhouses. And then in 2008, they topped it off again by comparing the murder and cannibalisation of Tim McClean to that of what goes on in slaughterhouses. Now, if you don't know what happened to Tim McClean, trigger warning. Seriously, trigger warning. He was killed on a Greyhound bus by someone who was severely mentally ill, and not only did he die, he also was decapitated, and he had his eyes, nose, tongue, ears, and everything removed. They were found in the killer's pockets, and horrendous case. It was even believed that the killer had actually ate parts of Tim. Horrible case, horrendous story. And you know what they did? They made an ad. They made an article comparing Tim McClean's death to the slaughtering of animals in slaughterhouses. This article is still up on the website, so I'm actually going to read this out to you. I'm going to read a section of their website, and do you know what? I want you for yourself to decide whether you think this is acceptable and appropriate, okay? So here we go. As though it were a gruesome scene in a horror movie, a Canadian Greyhound passenger found himself at the hands of a highly disturbed man this past weekend while en route from Edmonton to Winnipeg. Passengers riding the bus reported that Vince Lee jumped on top of 22-year-old Tim McClean and began stabbing him repeatedly before cutting off his head and allegedly consuming some of his flesh. Parts of Tim's ear, nose, and mouth were found in Lee's pockets. This tragic incident will certainly leave some scars on the minds of other passengers and the victims' friends and families. While it isn't every day that a human is violently attacked and eaten by another human, it's worth noting that the norm of many people not given any thought to the fact that restaurants are serving the flesh that comes from innocents who were minding their own business before someone came after them with a knife. How amazingly and conveniently compartmentalised the human mind is. I have nothing to say. PETA is running this ad to make people rethink the proposition that is, rightly so, a criminal act to kill and eat our own kind. But it's okay to kill every other species but our own to eat them. Hey, you know what other species do that? Kill and eat every other species but their own? Literally most of them! I get that we're human, okay, and we have other alternatives, I understand that. But sometimes people don't want those other alternatives. They don't like the alternatives. Some people have to eat meat for the iron or the nutrients that comes with eating that meat. Some people don't want to do that, but they have to for their own benefit. Some people don't like vegetables. Some people don't like certain textures. Some people just want to eat meat. And that's okay. Think of a lion. A lion is going to eat a zebra. You know, what are you going to hold them accountable? Oh, but we're all animals! We're all species. We're all animals. The fact that you ran this advert about a 22-year-old man who was stabbed and killed and murdered by another human, and were like, well, I'm not being funny, but we kill every other species, so why can't we kill that? Why is that wrong? It's like a mind flashbang. It's genuinely so insane. I don't understand. Is that going to make you go vegan? No, it's not going to make me go vegan. It's just going to make me feel awful for Tim McClean. And if you needed any more proof of PETA just being wrong, and just being, the worst non-profit organisation out there, in 2008 and 2014, PETA did the quote, Got Autism Campaign, okay, as a spin on the, do you remember the old Got Milk campaign that was in the 90s? And they basically said that their Got Autism campaign was a play on words mocking that industry because apparently milk and cow products cause autism. Yeah, I'm straight up not kidding, this is real. So this ad campaign ran from 1993 to 2014, and PETA stated that, quote, studies have shown a link between cow's milk and autism, which, that is not true. That is entirely false information. That is a completely insane claim, just as much as vaccines causing autism. PETA also claimed that milk was strongly linked to cancer, Crohn's disease and other diseases, and that is fair enough, especially if you're drinking raw milk, which you should not do. But when pressed about this, PETA actually cited two scientific papers, one from 1995 and one from 2002, and in both of these papers they used a very small sampling of children, one of them 36 and another one 20, and neither of them showed a correlation nor causation between milk and autism. So they just said a lie. They just created a campaign based off a pure lie. And we're like, yeah guys, this is true. Source, trust me bro. And despite having been corrected on this, so they realised that they couldn't use, you know, the milk autism. So instead what did they do? They were like, well, we can't use autism, so instead we'll use asthma, chronic ear infections, constipations, iron deficiency, anemia and cancer. And they didn't actually remove this campaign until 2021. And these are just a handful of the controversies, believe it or not, okay? This wasn't even what the original topic of this video was going to be. The original topic of this video that I'm making right now was supposed to be about the games that PETA have made, which we are still going to get into, don't worry. But this wasn't the original topic, but I could not make a video about this because it's crazy. It's insane that this is still an organisation. To me, it's mad. So yeah, as mentioned, PETA is actually known for making some weird ass games, okay? Parody games, to be specific. They release parodies of classic games using Flash that you can play online, so they're really easily accessible for online. For example, Cooking Mama. Wholesome, cute, lovely little game that I used to love playing when I was a kid. Love it. Mama, sweetheart. Lovely little game. Well, PETA decided to make their own version called Cooking Mama. Mama Kills Animals. And this consists of a mini game where you prep an animal corpse for Thanksgiving. It's graphic, it's disturbing, it's weird, nothing like the original Cooking Mama game. But after completing the main levels in Cooking Mama, Mama then decides that she's going vegan and hugs a live turkey while making a tofurkey. I don't give a fuck. The game also contains facts about turkeys and includes vegan Thanksgiving recipes. I think I'd rather shit in my hands and clap. Also in this game, PETA encourages the creator of Cooking Mama to, you know, include vegan recipes in their games. Which, I'm not being funny, the last thing a child needs growing up is to have a fear of certain foods. Children are picky enough as it is, and these games are definitely not helping that. They also released a parody of the game Super Meat Boy, named Super Tofu Boy. And in this game, you play as Tofu Boy, who is a block of tofu on a mission to save Bandage Girl from the evil clutches of Meat Boy. Meat Boy being the original main character of the real game. You know, the plant-based protagonist is the superhero and the meat character is actually evil. So what did Super Meat Boy do in response to this? Well, instead of, you know, crying about it, they actually clapped back and included Super Tofu Boy in their own game where they made him the character ever. He's slow, he can't jump high, he's awful, he sucks. Which is a perfect example and a perfect clapback to PETA. You know what, I'm not even like, oh yeah, I love me a steak and I love me a hamburger, but PETA makes me feel like that. Do you know what I mean? I'm not even like anti, you know, vegan. I am not, far from, but PETA makes me feel that way. PETA makes me feel like I should hate all vegans and vegetarians, which again, I need to preface, I do not, but why? Some vegans and vegetarians also felt that PETA was approaching the message the complete wrong way. They were going about it wrong. They were, you know, not happy with what they were doing. We've also spoke previously about the Pokemon remake of Pokemon Black and Blue, which is where I know. In the game, the Pokemon rebel against their human trainers who exploit them, and the Pokemon, you know, they fight back. And PETA claimed that Pokemon promotes animal cruelty by normalising the idea of capturing and forcing creatures to fight, which is kind of crazy because Pokemon actually portrays caring relationships with the carers and, you know, not abuse. Ash loves Pikachu. I think Ash would die if Pikachu died, you know what I mean? No! Bro would be devastated. He loves that little guy. You know, Pokemon fight, it's in their nature, like, you know, tigers fight, other animals fight. It's in their nature, it's just what they do. It doesn't mean it's abuse. I mean, if you're making animals fight, like dog fights, then yeah, that's horrendous. But animals do play fight, you know? They play fight, and that's what they do. Also, they parodied Super Mario Bros. As well, calling the game Mario Kills Tanuki. Because, you know, in the game, Mario wears a Tanuki suit. But this is where this gets a little bit dark, because I have to step back, right, and I think, why on earth are you doing this? Like, I know you're trying to spread a message, and I get that, but why are you doing this? Why on earth are you doing it? And I got thinking, right, and I was like, the thing is, the reason's a lot darker when you think about it, because Who is the main target of Mario, Pokemon, Cooking Mama, and these video games in general? Children. And by doing this, PETA are going directly for children, perhaps even traumatising them for what they end up coming across. Of course, they're trying to raise awareness for something that they stand for, and yeah, that is totally fine. I get that point, you know, but now I don't even know myself what they truly stand for because they contradict themselves. And they're trying to do it in a way people will remember, and again, fair enough. But the thing is, what PETA are doing is just rage bait. It's just rage bait. They're rage baiting. It doesn't matter if they get anyone on their side, as long as people are talking about it, that's all they care about. Which, you know, I'm kind of shooting myself in the foot by making this video, but oh well. The more YouTubers and the more people that come across these games and talk about it and share with their friends and share them online, the more attention that they're going to get and the more that they spread their message because of how shocking it is. And yeah, there probably will be the odd select people that do genuinely go vegan and become PETA supporters through this. And I'm not saying that their message is a bad message, because it's not a bad message, it's a good message. But the way that they go about it is wrong, and it makes people hate them. They're tone deaf as f***. They feature lots of gore. They're so aggressive in their preachy nature that makes people feel like you know, people don't want to join them. People don't want to be shouted at for liking meat. They would rather, you know, sit down and have a friendly conversation about it where you'd be like, hey, this is my reasoning, but I understand your reasoning as well. You know? The least important thing is no one is playing these games for quality. They have a one-time play thing, you know? It's the same thing. You play it once, you've played it. It's not, you know, about the replay value, it's about the shock value. And the thing is with PETA, they don't give up. They double down and they claim that their parodies are satire and part of their mission to provoke thought and not to please everyone. So the main question is it effective? No, it's not effective. That's why PETA have so many haters. I mean, yeah, sure, they're great at grabbing the headlines and getting the attention, and yeah, they do have supporters. They do. That's why they're still about, they get money, they do have supporters. But for people like me, and I'm sure lots of other people who do eat meat but also disagree with, you know, the way animals are treated, which again is wrong, and that does need to change, it makes me not want to support them. Because the average Joe is not going to look at PETA and go, okay, I'm vegan now. Because that's why the majority of people are not vegan. Everyone knows who PETA is, but the majority of the population still eat meat. Not to mention, PETA themselves are not innocent. What's the saying in the Bible? I don't read the Bible. He who has not sinned shall throw the first stone, you know? You can't come at me for eating a bacon butty when you kill dogs and cats. Just saying. You can't preach a message about animal rights while having a 90% euthanasia rate in your shelters. Sorry, your point's invalid. We humans are only here for a short time, you know? We have a right to decide what we do and what goes in our body, and you know, it's not, and I get it, again, it's awful what animals go through, but I can't do anything about it. I wish I could, but I'm not going to do that through PETA, you know? And again, meat eater or not, we can all collectively agree that animals should not be treated the way that they are treated in the farming industry. It's horrible, it's wrong. But this is just not the way to go about it. But unfortunately, that is all the information I have for this video. I hope you enjoyed. If you have any case requests, comments, or just want to say hi, let me know down below as I read every single comment. And if you would like to subscribe, please consider it. If you'd like to follow me on any of the social medias, especially Instagram, where you get information about videos before they even go up, I actually posted a story about this video today, so you should go and check that out. But that is in the link tree down below, so please consider it, as every follower is appreciated. But until the next video, stay safe.